This is going to be an interesting interview. It's a little different than maybe some things I've done in the past, but I get to interview my partner, best friend, and wife about some of the things that she's pretty excited about. So let me introduce Becky Radford Roush. How you doing there, dear?
Good morning, John. Thanks for this opportunity. I was thinking when you asked me to come in that too often we spend a lot of our time in our lives just tootling along and not really thinking about why are we doing what we do or what
Yeah.
caused us to go down those paths. So um, ask away, see what we
Well,
do.
one of the things that I've enjoyed being with you is learning about the different things that you're interested in. I've certainly drug you along in many of the things that I've been involved in. But you have an interest in antiques and very, very knowledgeable about it. So my question is, how did you develop that interest in antiquing and antiques besides marrying me?
Oh, I got you beat anyway. That's an easy one. I grew up in a wonderful, historic 1794, circa 1794 house in Western Massachusetts. And it was originally just 4 rooms built around a central chimney. So we had 3 fireplaces. Now, as a kid growing up, and then, of course, getting into preteens and teenage years, we always had the opportunity to have our friends come over, and everything about our house and our living environment was totally different from anybody else in the neighborhood.
Not many people had 3 fireplaces.
No, some of them didn't even have one fireplace. But in addition to the 3 fireplaces in the original 4 rooms, which if you stood there, you could look and see where an original wall had ended. And then, of course, it had been added on and all over the place. But the most interesting thing to me, besides the fireplaces, and I'll get back to that, were the floorboards. Every floor had uneven boards. They were beautiful old pine. Some were wide, some were narrow, some you had to slightly step up and incline. And your muscle memory was there. Back when I went back a few years ago, I knew in my head where to step up and where to step down. I didn't have to think about it. But here's an interesting thing. Did you know that the origin of the phrase run of the mill
I
is
think I know.
floorboards? You put down whatever the mill had. And if that day they were milling 14-inch wide boards, that's what you got.
So
If
run
that
of the
day was,
mill.
it was the run of the mill.
Wow.
And so we'd walk around the house, and the oldest ones, the widest boards, a good 12, 14, 15 inches wide, were right in the front hall entry. But you had to go up and go down, and I hadn't quite figured that out. The other thing that was so cool about it was, of course, the fireplace in the kitchen, dining room, was the bread oven. It had the big iron hook and the pots, and the top part was for the baking, and then the bottom was for the fuel, or for the wood storage or whatever you stored. But we never used that one because the chimney was as old as the house. We knew we were safe to run one fireplace in the living room, but no,
Not
not
all of
really.
them.
No,
Okay.
never. But it was just neat. But maybe I wouldn't have noticed how cool it was and unusual, and might have thought, oh, why do we have to live in this kind of house when the neighbors there, and there have this new and that new and all of these things? Except for my mother. My mother was cool.
Yeah, your mom was one of the neat ladies I've ever met.
But if you think about the concept of nature versus nurture, in the nature part of that, here was the house, here was the history of the town, here was the fact that one of the selectmen went to Boston and saved our house from being turning into a Howard Johnson's when they put the highway through. They rerouted it a couple miles down the road, so we were saved. But I totally just lost my train of thought.
Well,
So sorry.
that
Nature and nurture. I'm sorry.
yeah.
Got it. Rabbit trail. So there's the nature all around me, and I loved it. But the nurturing was my mother. If she was enthusiastic about something, I just absorbed that enthusiasm, and I said, oh, that must be a really cool thing to have, or that must be really important, or ooh, ooh, ooh. But if she didn't like something, I didn't like it either. And to this day, I hate spiders.
Yeah, your mom didn't like
A lot of spiders. So I just started collecting things. And I think my mother probably thought up the concept of eclectic decorating. Now, when you look back at these home remodeling shows or any of the magazines, you can have a primitive style or a European style or country, or now it's vintage and
industrial or
modern, whatever.
Sure.
But she just, if an item caught her fancy, it got into the mix. So we'd have two curved back Victorian sofas that she was supposed to sprawl out on with an old wooden original cobbler's bench
Well,
as a coffee table.
that explains a lot about our house
Ah,
because
yes.
I sometimes wander around and I wonder, where did this come from, or how did this, scene develop?
Well, that's
You
the
know,
other thing, too. Once you start collecting things, you just got to have them. And then you see it. So then there's the rule of, okay, if something comes in the house, something has to go out. So alas, an antiques booth, what could I do?
Yeah, well, that was an interesting chapter in our history of what we've done together, and actually, it's your project, but um, you had some fun doing that.
I did.
And I think the thing that struck me about as I learned about antiques is all the stories behind them. So, um, talk about the dining room table, which we recently gave away because we needed to get a larger table for our children and grandchildren when they visited. But what about that clawfoot oak table?
Well, that table was my father's childhood table, and he would do his homework. Now, with a round oak clawfoot table, of course, it's got a round pedestal, and then each of the four legs has a claw on the end. But when it goes up to the knees, it's a beautiful shape, and it was all softly polished because he would run his feet up and down the legs while he was doing his homework.
Oh, okay. And that kept that way until our
Yeah,
dog started to chew on it.
yeah, one of them did.
But the other things that are unique in our house right now is that clock.
Yes, the tavern clock.
Tell us about.
It's called an OG mantle clock, and it's about yay tall, and it's a winding clock, and it has the most horrible chime. It's bong bong.
Yeah,
Oh,
I would
so
agree.
we
It's
keep that
unique.
quiet. But it came out of a stagecoach tavern up in the Berkshires, and there was a family lodge up there, which is how my mother originally got up there to see it, and just had to have it. Somehow she got it.
So it's basically from the 1700s, that clock? Late 17.
Early 18, turn of the century.
I mean, I can just imagine the stagecoach rolling up to that building and that clock's on a mantle.
Now, whether the stagecoach obviously wasn't still going by there when my mother found
Oh,
the clock,
yeah.
but the clock had been there all that time.
Wow.
Mm.
Mm.
And I have a table that I've had since I was a teenager that has gone everywhere with me. It's a square side table. It's been cut down, and the other grandparents of the other side of the family had it behind their wood cook stove, and they would just pull out, set a pan on it, or it was just there, just down behind the stove. My mother, they were going to throw it out. They were moving off the farm and going into town. And at that point, the philosophy of all the people like that were, oh, this old stuff, that's just junk. Let's throw it out. My mother's going, no, no, no. So she kept grabbing stuff, and she brought that table home, and I loved it. And I still have it.
Well, and our children and grandchildren
Yep.
will probably have that table somewhere down the road.
And the other thing that's so cool that I made a point of doing with the kids is telling them, if not the story of the item, at least the proper name. So the round buckets with a wooden handle of various sizes, sometimes called pantry boxes, there are pantry boxes, but if it were big and it had a handle, It's a firkin.
Firkin?
Firkin, a sugar firkin, Firkin. So they would name, I would name things like that's a Hoosier cupboard, and that's a salt box, and this is a whatever. Just and they belong.
Well,
Thanks.
that's the other thing that I've seen, especially Elizabeth. She's really latched onto that,
Yeah.
and she's really gotten into her own antique journey.
Remember the time they called and she said, Brad just drove 200 miles, or maybe it wasn't that far, but it was a good story. Brad just heard about a Hoosier cupboard for sale on the radio, and he's going to drive out there. And I'm wondering, what's the value? What's a fair price? So she described it to me, and we came up with a price, and she has it now in her kitchen.
Well,
Had to
yeah,
have her own Hoosier.
that's the neat thing because we're passing on a knowledge legacy of things that too often we just, like you said, throw things out and move to the next new thing, next functional thing. One of the things that I've appreciated about the stories of the different things that we have in the house, and being a woodworker, is seeing the craftsmanship of of the different things. And then you'll often find writing and different types of things inside these things or underneath the table or the bench or whatever it is. But the dovetail joints that were made and cut by hand,
Square nails, hand cut.
just incredible. And I've done my fair share of repairing those things. Um, of course, I haven't gotten to the point where I'm going to be cutting dovetails by hand,
That's
but
all right. There are enough of them out there. We're good.
yeah, I
Oh, what about the mouse holes in the back of cupboards?
yeah.
That's a thing. You gotta have it.
we
You
we've had-
can't replicate a
no.
genuine mouse hole. So if you find one or the square nails or whatever, it's real.
Well, folks, now you have an idea what my daily routine's like around the house. When you looked at on these things that you had the opportunities and the options to get involved with, what really sticks in your mind as one of the key things that triggered all this? And one of the, I guess the other thing is in our current collection in the house, because it has changed many times over the years. What's your favorite piece?
The blanket chest that I haven't seen in 35 years
Oh,
because it has to be covered with 5 layers of blankets because it's on the end of the bed, and we always have dogs that
jump up.
lever off of that.
Yeah.
But I just had a thought. I think what caused me to, in the maybe subconsciously, want to have an antique shop sometime was that there was a dealer who lived quarter of a mile down the street from us. And we have one of these, but my mother always had these, can't think what they're called, but particular kind of lamp that had a chimney and a globe fit together. Well, in our house, there was always a pillow fight going on somewhere. We broke more globes. So she'd make a phone call and she'd say, all right, Mr. Hederman is waiting for you. So down the road we'd go. And as we went out the door, she'd say, do not put the lampshades on your heads. That's what.
You put them on your head.
Well, it was fun to go down there because they were probably hoarders, because there was a tunnel through every room, but that family knew exactly what antique they had and the provenance of it. So that's where my blanket chest came from, and numerous globes on the head. Walked home. They also had goats, but I didn't like.
Well, one of the things I remember in the few opportunities I had to go back to Ludlow and be in that house, was a trip we took to Sturbridge Village.
Oh yes, Sturbridge Village.
Now, here's my question, folks, and if you have an opportunity to go to our house, one of the things you'll notice on most every wall, shelf, there's a clock. And I don't know where this fascination with clocks came from.
They tick.
Well, here's the other side of that story. As much as we have so many clocks, sometimes timeliness is not the most generous quality that we both share.
Well, they're never all the same.
Oh, yeah. So, talk about what happened at Sturbridge Village, because I remember that so well.
We went into the clock building where all of the famous colonial clock makers had various, but there's banjo clocks and the mantle clocks and the grandfather clocks and the grandmother clocks and all of the others. But they had them set, a huge room. They were set, all offset by a few seconds. So that when one started chiming, that's the one you heard, and then it went all the way around the room.
It was an
Ours do
amazing
that.
sequence.
You notice ours don't fight with each other, so I don't know who's 5 minutes fast and who's 5 minutes slow, but it doesn't matter.
Well, thank goodness for our iPhones, because now we know what time it is. As we kind of wrap this conversation up, and I hope all of you enjoyed this, and we'll do it again. Antiques are benchmarks in history, and unfortunately, I think a lot of our young people don't really tune in and get interested in our history, and that's a shame. So I want to thank my partner, best friend, for being with us today, and thank you for tuning in to Flightlines Options and Opportunities, the podcast that tries to get behind the stories with the other stories. And we hope you enjoyed this. Have a great day, and go get an antique and enjoy the history that you'll find out about that.
Or does that mean take an old person to lunch?
Yeah, that's coming. You knew that was coming. Anyway, have a good day and God bless.